Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sunday School. This is Miss Marianne. I hope you are doing really well. I hope your new year is starting off great. And happy Epiphany. Today is Epiphany Sunday. So, Epiphany is the day when we mark the end of the Christmas season. So, Christmas goes from Christmas Day until Epiphany Sunday, which is 12 days after Christmas. So, it's officially on January 6th, but since in the church we only meet on Sundays, we remember it today on Epiphany Sunday. And Epiphany is the day when we remember the wise men, and they finally arrive in Bethlehem today. So even though they're part of our Christmas story and we talk about them then, officially they don't arrive until Epiphany because they were coming from really, really, really far away. So it takes them a long time to get there. You'll even see some pictures of the Magi with like a 2 to 3 year old Jesus because some people believe that it might have taken that long before the Magi got there. You will hear them referred as the three kings, the three wise men, and the Magi. So, and there's a really lovely song about them being kings, but they weren't really kings. They were more like scholars. They were wise men, and they were so wise. They studied the stars, and they would tell people things that they needed to know. So the people would think that they were like magic because they knew all this stuff. And so Magi is where we get our word magic because that's what the people in their country would call them. And the important things about them is that they were coming from really far away. They were coming from a whole nother land, another country, another culture. And they came and they recognized this baby as an important future leader, a king. And so that's what we are remembering as these people that were coming from really far away and honoring this future king and honoring him. So we are going to use this really beautiful book that I think you will really enjoy called Home by Another Way, A Christmas Story by Barbara Brown Taylor. It's really beautiful and I think you'll really like it. I'm going to show you the back because it's the artwork is lovely. So I think you'll really enjoy that today. Before we get going, let us light our candle and do our opening prayer. All right, let's just take a couple deep breaths and then we will do our opening prayer. Loving God, may your light shine our way as it once guided the steps of the wise men, that we too may be led into your presence and worship you. Amen. I'm going to start by reading just a couple sentences, a little piece from the Bible version of this story. It comes from the book of Matthew, chapter 2, and I will be reading in an RSV version that if you have a Bible from the church, it's the same type. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we have observed his star at its rising, and we have come to pay him homage." And homage means they want to honor him, or it's like worship him. And then the king sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child. And when you have found him, bring me word, so that I may go and pay him homage." And when they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. And when they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. Home by Another Way. I'm going to show you this title page. It's just beautiful. Here's the opening page. Also has part of the Bible story that I read. Once upon a time, There were 3 very wise men who were all sitting in their own countries, minding their own business, when a bright star lodged in the right eye of each of them. The star was so bright that none of them could tell whether it was burning in the sky or in their own imaginations. But they were wise enough to know that it did not matter that much. The point was that something beyond them was calling them, and it was the tug that they had been waiting for their whole lives. Each in his own country had tried books, tried magic, tried astrology. One had lived on nothing but dried herbs boiled in water. Another had spent his entire fortune learning how to read and write in an ancient language. A third had learned to walk on hot coals, though it did nothing for him beyond a great sense of relief he felt at the end. Despite their best efforts, all 3 of them felt that something was missing. They were all glad for a reason to get out of town, which was clearly where the star was calling them. Out, away from everything that they knew how to manage and survive, out from under reputations they had built for themselves, the high expectations, the disappointing returns. And so they set out one by one, each believing that they were the only one with a star, until they all ran into one another on the road to Jerusalem. From a distance, each thought the other to be a mirage at first, a twinkling reflection made of vapor and heat. But as they drew near to one another, they saw the star that they had in common, like a tattoo or a secret handshake, something that made them brothers before they spoke. They all believed that the star was leading them to Jerusalem. This made perfect sense because they had every reason to believe they were on their way to meet a king. They had no trouble getting into the palace. They looked rich, and that was enough to get them a royal audience. But the king that they meant was something of a disappointment. He was lumpy and rumpled, and he had terrible breath. His skin looked a funny orange color and sickly, as if his bile had gotten the best of him. The guards on either side of him shook in fear of their king, so much that their spears rattled against their shields. Without even comparing notes, the wise men know that he was not the person they were looking for. Do you know of any other kings in the general area? They asked him. He had been picking his fingernails until then, letting them know how bored he was. But their question got his attention. He looked right at them for the first time, and that was when he saw the star in each of their eyes, and his own eyes grew perfectly round, like the eyes of a snake. The king asked the wise men if he would please excuse them for a moment. Then he stepped into his private chapel to confer with his clergy. They whipped out their old reference books, which smelled of mold, and told the king what he wanted to know. Yes, they said, there was something in the book of Micah about a new ruler for Israel, but it was nothing to get excited about. It was short, it had been there for a long time, and it was unlikely that the men in the other room were fulfilling that prophecy. But sure, why not? Send the wise men to Bethlehem to check it out, to save the king a little money instead of doing his own research. So that is what the king did. He gargled, combed his hair, and went back to tell the wise men that they should go to Bethlehem at once, with his blessing, on one condition, that they came back and tell him what his successor was, who he was, so that he could send flowers to the new king. His breath smelled like pine saw when he said it, which made the wise men feel queasy. They knew something was not right, but once they were back out into the night air, they could see the star in the sky again, and it set their minds at ease. They followed it right to the doorway of a one-room house in Bethlehem. It was a perfectly nice place, modest and well-built, but though not the kind of place where they had expected to find a king. A dog was sniffing the wood pile under the eaves in hopes of a mouse. Someone was practicing the lute next door, going over the same notes again and again. The smell of dinner was still in the air, wheat cakes cooked on a griddle greased with sheep's fat, lentils and garlic, and rice. The place looked so simple, they might never have chosen it themselves. But since a star had chosen it for them, they knocked. When the door opened, the couple standing behind it almost died of fright. Not that the wise men noticed. With their arms full of gifts, they crowded into the small space, bumping their turbans on the rafters and snagging their robes on the rough furniture. All they could see was the baby, who was not afraid and whose right eye shone with the same star that they had seen since they left home. It was him, whoever he was. They did not have a clue, but they knew what to do. They got on their knees and they bowed. And then they gave him the things that they had brought for him: gold, frankincense, and myrrh, all the wrong things they could see now, things he had no use for. They should have brought goat's milk, a warm blanket, something shiny to hang above his crib. But how could they have guessed? The child's parents were gracious, and they thanked the strangers for the expensive gifts, and they held them for the baby to see. Then, to the men's complete surprise, the child's mother picked him up and handed him around so that each of them held that damp, soft, living weight in his arms. And when they were finished admiring him, she took the baby back, nursed him, and put him to bed. Then, before the light coming out through the window of the house had entirely gone out, the three wise men fell asleep where they sat. In the morning, when they woke, the wise men could not find the stars anywhere. They searched in each other's eyes, but the stars were gone. Frantically, they looked in the corners and under the chairs. The baby's mother even shook out the blankets, but still, no stars. Soon the wise men calmed down and said, "Never mind, we do not need them anymore." They had found what they were looking for, something they could not lose. As much as they hated to, they added, they had better be on their way. They would not be going back through Jerusalem, they said. Excuse me. All three of them had woken from the same identical dream, warning them to steer clear of the city. If anyone in Jerusalem knew anything at all, they would be here instead of there. Besides, none of the wise men's maps worked anymore. They would have to find a new way home. So the wise men picked up their packs, which were lighter than before, and then they lined up in front of the baby to thank him for the gifts that he had given them. What in the world are you talking about? The baby's mother said, laughing. For the scent and weight and skin of a baby, said the first wise man, who had no interest in living on herbs anymore. For this home and the love here, said the second wise man, who could not remember how to say it in an ancient language. For a really great story, said the third wise man, who thought that telling it might do a lot more for him than walking on coals. And then the wise men walked outside, stretched, kissed the baby goodbye, and went home by another way. I wonder what you think of this story. I wonder if anything surprised you in this story. I wonder which part you liked best. I wonder how the wise men felt when they saw baby Jesus. I wonder what it would be like to have stars in your eyes. I wonder if the gifts of frankincense, gold, and myrrh, I wonder if you think that they were good gifts to give. I wonder what gifts you would give baby Jesus. I wonder if there are parts of the story that we could take out and still have all the story that we need. Today is called Epiphany. And an epiphany means to have an aha moment, a moment when you suddenly understand something that you didn't understand before, like a revelation. And the wise men had an aha moment, that they understood the importance of this baby. They recognized something special about him. I wonder how epiphanies happen. I wonder if you've ever had an epiphany. Is there something that you suddenly understood that you didn't before? And I wonder what you are going to do this week. I hope you find some really great fun things to do this week. In your email, there is an activity sheet and a coloring sheet that talks about that quote from the Bible on them being overcome with joy. And the activity sheet has like a joy break in it and some further thoughts on this subject that you can do. So it's a really nice little worksheet and a beautiful coloring sheet. So if you can get that printed out, I hope that you enjoy that. So that is in your email for today. Let us do our closing prayers. I will bring back our candle. Loving God, we thank you for the times that bring us close to you and to one another. Help us to remember that you are always with us. Amen. And I will change this light so the light of Christ can be with you wherever you are. Wherever you go, this light will find you and it will be there when you need it. Take care of yourselves. Have a great week.